Hey there folks, Wrel here. Today we'll be offering up a guide to the Lightning's Skyguard anti-air turret. We'll be breaking down the specifics of how it functions with respects to other anti-air options, and we'll also go over the strategies and situations that make the Skyguard one of the finest anti-air platforms in the entire game. As a quick side note, I've also linked some timestamps in the video description below if you're interested in skipping to a specific section. The Skyguard is a turret option available specifically to the Lightning tank, which will run you 1000 certs or 700 station cash to unlock. Equipping a Skyguard turns your Lightning into an anti-air platform that quickly fires flak rounds which detonate on proximity with enemy aircraft. As you can tell in the background, the range at which the proximity detonation takes effect is pretty good. We're not going to be doing a lengthy numerical review of the turret itself because this is more of a guide than a review, but I do want to take a moment to outline some of the important bits. The tooltip says that the Skyguard deals 200 damage per hit within 100 meters and then drops off to 150 damage over 300 meters, but the indirect damage is only 60 until 6 meters and then it tapers out over the next two. This may be a little bit misleading because 200 damage per hit applies to infantry and ground vehicles, but it has nothing to do with air vehicles. Against air, you will always deal the full amount of flak damage to the vehicle that triggers it. If for some reason that you've got a couple ESFs humping one another, then there's technically the possibility of some splash damage involved, but don't count on that really happening. So you're always going to be looking at the 60 flak damage, but even that is heavily modified by resistances. So to drop an ESF, you're going to need 32 shots to kill. A Valkyrie is going to take 80 shots to kill, a Liberator is going to take 129 shots to kill, and a Galaxy will take 195. The Skyguard has a 70 round magazine with 1050 in reserve. This means that ESF are the only targets that you can reliably kill in a single magazine, and only if they're close enough to you where you'll actually land at least 46% of your shots. When it comes to fighting ground targets, a Skyguard can't go toe-to-toe with most other vehicles. Infantry it can deal with pretty well, but outside of that, you'll need to be left alone to deal any sort of significant damage. If somebody is actively attacking you, the Lightning just doesn't have enough health or armor to wear down another vehicle start to finish. It's because of these traits, the Skyguard is first and foremost a support platform. You will rake in anti-air deterrence ribbons and assist experience like nobody's business, but when it comes to raw kill potential, this usually won't be your best option. Given that, the roles of the Skyguard are as follows. Number 1 is to create an area of denial wherever you go, even as a solo player. Basically, you're helping to create a no-fly zone, which in turn limits the enemy's choices when it comes to attacking your allies. The second role is just to defend your allies. Skyguards are helpful for providing air support where there is none, so if you see an enemy aircraft chasing an allied one, you can shoot it down. If you have a Liberator that's trying to drop a Sunderer, you can put some pressure on them. It's a common sight to have main battle tanks, harassers, and Sunderers without anti-air options equipped, so being the good Skyguard that you are, you can help fill the gap. The third role would be to clear enemy aircraft as you press into a contested hex. In other words, it's being offense. Killing isn't easily accomplished on your own, so generally speaking, pressing the offense into another hex means that you're traveling with an allied vehicle convoy. When these roles are performed, the rewards are pretty significant. An air deterrence bonus provides experience when a certain amount of damage is done to enemy aircraft. On top of that, you'll also earn ribbons, which are 250 experience, when you've received enough of those air deterrence bonuses. Then, you'll also gain assist experience based on the amount of damage you've done to the vehicle and the threat level of the target. Kills won't be as common with the Skyguard, but picking off weakened and fleeing targets will be the easiest ways to do that. Dealing with enemies should be prioritized primarily by their threat level, with some accommodations made for current health and range. ESF, for example, are easy to destroy from a numbers perspective and they can inflict a reasonable amount of damage, but they've also got a smaller hitbox, so if they are a good distance away, they're probably not worth shooting at while there are other targets in the air. But if one is smoking or on fire, yeah, it'd be a good idea to finish it off, unless there's something absolutely extremely crucial that you need to deal with right now. Tankbuster plus Dalton combos are a 1-2 hit that can even be accomplished by a single Liberator pilot. Because of that, Liberators are naturally a much higher threat than an ESF, so if both of them are paying attention to you, it might be a good idea to focus on the Liberator first. Another example would be galaxies. Galaxies have huge hitboxes, they travel slowly, so it's very easy to land shots on them even from a great distance away. But unless they have a crew shooting at you, their threat level is relatively low. Those are examples, but you need to use your discretion, of course. Threat level is important, but knowing where enemies are in their reload rotations, how they're positioned in relation to you, or how skilled a player they actually are can all factor into which target takes priority. When you're coordinating with other Skyguards, calling out your targets is especially helpful, same as you would if you were in a Lancer squad or something similar. Skyguards deal support level damage with just 1 in operation, but they have respectable kill potential with 2 in operation, and they can even reach an extreme level of effectiveness with 3 working together. 3 Skyguards is enough to drop most targets with ease provided they're being focused down, and those targets are a reasonable distance away where you won't be missing too many shots. I'd like to go off on a quick tangent here and just say that every player should try to unlock their Skyguard, even if you primarily play infantry. Lightning tanks cost 350 resources to pull, they're highly mobile, meaning that you can pull them a base back from where the actual fighting is taking place, and most importantly, they don't require a crew to operate at full capacity. Burster maxes, by contrast, cost 450 resources to pull. They are chained to the base you spawn them at unless you have more players available to transport you, and you generally have lower survivability than a Skyguard. A Sunderer with dual walkers only costs 200 resources to pull, but it requires at least 2 players to man the weapons, and you'll have less maneuverability overall unless you have 3 players, with one of them being the dedicated driver. So each of these are great options for specific situations, but Skyguards are what you, as an individual player, can pull when a base is too camped out for burster max, or when you need some anti-air at low cost, or when you want to provide some highly mobile coverage for that friendly armor convoy. That said, let's talk about loadout options, and then we'll circle back around to more specific strategy. There are 2 main loadouts worth thinking about when it comes to Skyguards. The first we'll call the stealth roaming loadout, and the second we'll call the convoy support loadout. For the Skyguard turret, the optics are always going to be the same for me, and that would be thermals. A long time ago, night vision and thermal vision both had the ability to highlight anti-tank mines, and for that they were very, very useful. They don't do this anymore, but even so, they're still the most useful option you'll have access to. Thermals will highlight enemy infantry and enemy aircraft and vehicles in bright orange, which is useful for obvious reasons against infantry, but also useful for tracking low-flying planes through foliage, especially on Hassan. Night vision is another option, as it can darken out the skies at distance, allowing you to spot enemy aircraft, but it doesn't specifically highlight infantry or vehicles. I don't find this very necessary, as I'd personally take the infantry highlighting that thermals provide, but if you do have some trouble spotting air targets in the night sky, this can be an inexpensive option. When it comes to zoom, the Skyguard is not a precise weapon, so unless your sensitivity is all messed up, you won't need to have to zoom in order to stay on target. Also, scopes with zoom can make it difficult to lead targets properly if you aren't used to the level of zoom. So in my opinion, I think it's just better to stay away from these. There is a passive attachment option that decreases your reload time by 0.5 seconds at max rank, and it does so at great cost. Unless you're a die-hard Skyguard enthusiast, you should probably save the certification line for completion, at least beyond the first rank or 2. It is very useful, especially given the Skyguard's limited magazine size, but it is also very, very expensive. Additional ammo, on the other hand, is always a good thing, and you get a good chunk of it with each upgrade. More so than the reload speed, I would suggest dumping some certifications into this area, as even the first few ranks are very inexpensive. Skyguards drink ammo like water, and staving off trips to an ammo tower will keep you from giving up any good flanking spots that you find. To talk about the stealth roaming loadout, you'd be going fire suppression in your utility slot, stealth in your defensive slot, and racing chassis in your chassis slot, though this is more personal preference than anything else. Outside of fire suppression, your only other option is IR smoke, which just is not that good, because ground-to-ground lock-on launchers just aren't all that prevalent. Stealth helps you stay off the radar unless you're spotted, and maxing out stealth is extremely useful, as vehicles auto-detect themselves when enemies are within a certain range. The more hidden you are, the less likely you are to be the target of focus. For the chassis option, I'm going to point to the Racer because I think it's more helpful for escaping enemies who are likely to pursue you, but again, it is preference. For an implant option, I think it makes a lot of sense to run a tier 3 EOD implant on the engineer class, as you have no protection from enemy mines. But if you aren't so worried about that, then enhanced targeting or awareness are great implants for the setup. So as a stealth roaming loadout, what you're primarily looking for is a flanking position where enemies are likely to retreat to after being wounded. This is usually on the outskirts of a fight, even within enemy territory, near landing pads and tech plants and such. This is decent advice for any Skyguard loadout, but the stealth defensive slot will keep passerbys from getting nosy. The convoy support loadout is running a fire suppression in the utility slot for reasons that we mentioned earlier, the rival chassis, which is again personal preference, but you won't have to worry so much about running into enemy battle tanks if you're running with a convoy, so the extra maneuverability can be kind of useful. For the defensive slot, we're going to run either Mine Guard, Nanite Auto Repair, or Side Armor, and I know that's a lot of things, but it depends on the convoy's composition. If you're running with a Repair Sunderer nearby, then Nanite Auto Repair just isn't that important. But if you're just casually following around main battle tanks and such, then it's useful to be able to repair passively while you provide support. I say Side Armor as an option because the main sources of damage against you while a Skyguard is active usually aren't the airborne targets. They're infantry with rocket launchers or enemy vehicles. Rival is also synergetic with Side Armor in that you can keep from getting hit from behind and maneuver yourself to a better position within the convoy. Lastly, I really enjoy running Mine Guard in a convoy, but I do usually pair it with Racer Chassis as well. Since the addition of the Deploy Shield and the rise of Battle Sundies, you see a lot less people run Mine Guard nowadays. Racer and Mine Guard allows me to get in front of people who would usually barrel on cluelessly toward the next base, and I get to soak up a mine or two for them. Usually when they see me take some tank mine damage, they'll stop and start to think, and I get the added benefit of not losing my Skyguard in the process. I know a number of people who use proximity radar, but I think that overall awareness and positioning will render this defensive certification less and less useful than other alternatives. If it was still a utility slot option, then that would be a completely different story, but right now its uses are kind of iffy. For implants, again, it is the engineer class with EOD 3 or enhanced targeting. If you're running Mine Guard and actively leading the group, you don't really need to worry about using EOD, and awareness loses a lot of its effectiveness since you've got more people spotting more targets. So in most situations, at least for this loadout, enhanced targeting is where it's at. So those are the two loadouts that I would suggest, but it's not like there's a whole lot of room for creativity here regardless. Now let's get back to talking about some more specific strategies for Skyguard use. The first strategy just goes back to convoys. If you can enlist a couple of people to Skyguard alongside you, you'll find a lot of success in clearing the skies. Having an ammo or repair sunderer along for the ride, as well as some ground-to-ground fighters, will create a very well-rounded group capable of sowing chaos wherever you need it. Something I've mentioned a few times throughout this is a flank or a sweet spot or a good positioning, and what that comes down to really is a good view and a safe spot. So without the support of allies, a Skyguard should be at the edges of a battle, where enemies are a good distance away. If you do have a lot of support, then the safest place can sometimes be right in the thick of it all. Do remember that Skyguards are primarily a support vehicle capable of setting up areas of denial, but without a safe spot to provide that service, you're an easy target. Speaking of easy targets, vehicles that are smoking, burning, or hovering should be among your first targets. And we talked about threat levels earlier, and that still applies, but if you can knock an enemy out of the fight completely, that'll be much more valuable than someone who's going to leave, repair, and be back a minute later. Sometimes it's worthwhile to hold fire until an enemy is close enough to you that they won't be able to react until it's too late. Oftentimes, air vehicles will not notice you around because even on the minimap, you're just another lightning. The dead giveaways are always the damage and the sound. The Skyguard is loud, and its flak is an immediate indicator that this is not a place where the enemy wants to be. So if the opportunity presents itself, you should hold your fire until enemies get into range, or slow down, or start to hover, and then you just let them have it. Keep in mind though that it is normal player behavior to flee when taking damage, especially when you don't know where it's coming from, and vehicles are no different. ESF will usually take flak for a second to a second and a half, and then they'll slam on their afterburners and bank left or right. Learn to predict this action, and get your shots ahead of the target to inflict the most damage. To build on that, the Skyguard does not have an amazingly fast projectile. In fact, the projectile velocity is pretty bad at 400 meters per second. What this means is that you'll usually be doing a lot of leading on your targets. A technique to help with this is to lead your targets much further than you think you'll have to, and then you choke up on that distance until you start doing damage. If your target isn't a great distance away and isn't too far above you, one technique I think is extremely powerful is to just hip fire your Skyguard. So in the first person mode, your turret is not stabilized horizontally. If you steer left or right while trying to aim at a target, the entire turret will follow the facing of the tank. It is extremely annoying, but if you press the T key by default, you'll move to the third person mode, and hip firing the vehicle this way removes that stabilization problem, allowing you to always keep your crosshair on the target. It doesn't, however, remove the delay associated with the turret's rotation. That is always there, but it does help counteract some bad gameplay mechanics associated with vehicle control. Switching to third person from time to time is also helpful for staying aware of what's going on around you. Enemy vehicles, heavy assaults with rocket launchers, and light assaults carrying C4, they're all threats. And if you get tunnel vision, you'll lose your Skyguard to any one of them. So outside of switching to third person, it is useful to watch your minimap and even expand it by pressing the H key. Binding your minimap zoom to scroll in and scroll out with your mouse is also a great tool to have in your arsenal. Overall, I think that the Skyguard is an inexpensive and highly rewarding anti-air platform, thanks to the implementation of air deterrence ribbons and assist experience. It's best used in conjunction with a couple of other Skyguards for killing potential, or as a deterrent to guard allied vehicle convoys from enemy air. Being that the Lightning tank is an extremely mobile platform, you can pull this vehicle from a base that isn't already infested with an air zerg and pick off stragglers from the outskirts. This helps erode the force multiplier advantage at a certain hex, and it makes the skies safer for everyone. If this video has been interesting, helpful, or entertaining, please feel free to like, subscribe, tell your friends about the channel, and this is something that I've reviewed in the past, but so much has changed since that review that it was definitely overdue for an update. Thanks very much, folks. Wrel signing off.